Welcome back to Hermetically Speaking, or if it's your first time, welcome to Hermetically Speaking, where we explore healing, trauma, and the intersection of psychology and spirituality, which Hermetics and ancient teachings call mystic psychology. And I am your lovely vessel and host, Toria. In this episode, we're discussing all the things about flashbacks, how there's alchemy in them, the subliminal messaging from them, and as well as drawing very profound parallels between flashbacks and premonitions. So hold on to your seats. We're going to deep dive in. I'm throwing in this out of place disclaimer just because going through this script today, even though I pre-read it last night and edited it, so the psychosis that I went through and the trauma, not just the trauma, but the PTSDs from the trauma were traumatizing in itself for me to experience. And so reading some of this stirs up some anxiety, and I could feel it throughout the recording of this podcast. So there are stuttering and moments that are, just I had to kind of edit more than I've had to in the previous episodes. So bear with me, however, enjoy the episode greatly. Flashbacks are one of the most recognizable symptoms of the PTSDs and the most unavoidable. It's the most unavoidable and in-your-face symptom, just like addiction and alcoholism are to addicts and alcoholics. It's extremely difficult to participate in life or do anything when a flashback is occurring. A flashback is a language we think we understand. However, it's also subliminal messaging directly from your mind, your soul, and ultimately your higher self. At least in my experience. And that's what we're here to dive into today. Considering we live in an infinite reality, it could very well be different for others, and remaining open to that is vital in acceptance and following our pathways. Chances are, if you are here, we have some common denominators and can probably help each other out, so listen and give me a shout. Email and socials are in the descriptions because I always forget to do the shameless plugs on the actual podcast. So, how could flashbacks possibly be misunderstood? Or what kind of subliminal messaging are they trying to convey other than what feels like absolute torment? I am here today to answer just that, with my goal being to help you identify what a flashback is, how it shows up, and why understanding it is a crucial step in healing, all from a mystical, psychological, and alchemical perspective. Whether you're here to make sense of your own experiences or you're supporting a loved one, I promise you're in the right place. Let's start with the basics. During a traumatic experience, the brain often suppresses or fragments memories to protect you. A flashback is when your mind and body relive these traumatic events or even partial fragments of them, as if it's happening in the present day. One thing that we do need to be aware of is that just like healing is done in layers, trauma is created in layers. Therefore, our memories are also suppressed and fragmented in layers. Now, there is an order to this chaos that we cannot see. A higher order, orchestrated beyond our conscious understanding. It exists in the unseen etheric waters of our souls, corresponding and being coordinated by our higher selves in the realms of higher consciousness. Flashbacks are not random. They are funneled through in a specific sequence to aid our healing, each one surfacing at the exact right time. No sooner, no later. It is of my experience and profound understanding that my higher self knew what needed to come first, what needed to come next, and what needed to wait until I was ready. If I had tried to organize my flashbacks on any level of the ego, I wouldn't have even known where to start. Now, I could sit there and pretend like, oh yeah, I could have organized that. Absolutely not. I probably never would have even wanted to start if it actually came down to it. I certainly couldn't have said, this one should come first or that one should have come later. The truth is, each flashback happened exactly in the order it was meant to protect me from myself, to prevent me from being overwhelmed beyond anything that I could handle at any given moment. And trust me, there were times I didn't believe I could handle another one. There were times that I thought they would never end, that I would be trapped in this cycle forever, drowning in experiences that felt like they could literally be the death of me. And yet here I am, sitting before you today, flashback free. Don't get me wrong. Even as I sit here today, I am curious about the lineage of my flashbacks. There are specific ones that I wonder why in this order, this time, and this place. Ultimately, though, I have come to a deep understanding that my higher self is not only trustworthy, it will also reveal the answers to me in the right time. You hear that, higher self? Still waiting on some answers. Anyways, one of the main things, especially in the first 1 to 2 years of the psychosis that I experienced, was that they screamed at me in my head repeatedly, over and over again. It was this phrase, the words, timing is everything. Timing is everything. Timing is everything. And of course, at that time, I didn't listen. I didn't want to. I wanted what I wanted, and I wanted it right then and there. However, my higher self knew that to have what I thought I wanted right then and there would have only led to more destruction. So instead, the psychosis so kindly, putting that in air quotes, kept me on my prophetic track. Thanks a lot, psychosis. No, really, seriously, I do thank it now. A year or two ago, pretty traumatized about having been in psychosis still. However, now I've really stepped into I've processed the fact that I was traumatized of being in that type of psychosis or traumatic event experience. And now I'm to the point where it's like, no, really, I want to thank the psychosis because, even though my smartassism comes out, the reality is that I would not be here today. I would not be fulfilling my dharma of the vessel that I am with these experiences and this strength without the experience of the 5 years in psychosis, and even the experiences prior to that. So back to flashbacks. This is definitely why I keep script because I will squirrel and rabbit hole. And while everything connects, scripts make it much easier for all of us. I promise. Because I used to when I would try to podcast in the years previously, I would just kind of go for it. And no, scripting just makes life so much easier. So if you're on the fence, maybe try it. At least it worked for me. I don't know. I feel like I'm really nervous today. I don't know what it is. So we'll just, get this podcast out there and fight all the nerves and, enter into it with confidence and sovereignty and know that I am a blessed being and so are you. And I hope this finds you at the right time. So anyways, as I said before, I have been free of flashbacks for I don't even know how long now, quite a few years. The visual ones, at least. There are minor ones that may come up with smells or triggers or things like that. However, the ones that just take complete control over you, that you feel like you have no control over your life or your body or your mind or anything, those have been gone for a long time. And I say this because you probably need to hear it. They do end. It is 100% possible and probable that you will get there. I absolutely promise you. As long as you are showing up and doing the work and following the path, it will happen. Healing is not linear, and at times it does feel endless. And then one day there is this moment when you wake up and realize you have completely processed what you believed once would always control you. That your mind, your body, and your soul have integrated what needed to be integrated, and the symptoms become much milder. And as my prolonged exposure therapist said, basically non-detectable. So if you're in the depths of it, feeling like there's no way forward, trust your higher self. Trust that what is surfacing is doing so in divine timing. Trust that you are not being given more than you can handle, even when it feels unbearable. Because one day, you too will wake up and realize it's over and you are free. Now, we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of the flashbacks. A flashback is no longer just a memory. It becomes a whole nother experience. You don't just remember it, you re-enter into it. The same emotions surge back, the same sounds echo in your ears, the same physical sensations resurface, the same smells, the same environment. It's as if, for a moment, time completely collapses around you and you are back inside that moment, reliving it. What makes it not just a memory? Why does it take over the present instead of staying in the past like any other thought? Here's where it gets all mystical, alchemical, and psychological. I'm really going to have to come up with a fun anagram or something for those 3 words. Trying to intertwine them. I tried to do it when I was writing the script, and it was funny. Anyways, there's something intriguing that I want to, kind of unfold about the way flashbacks behave. And this is where it gets really profound. In many ways, flashbacks actually resemble premonitions. And as being someone that has had both extensively, it is crazy to draw this parallel, but it is so healing and uplifting and illuminating. So they resemble premonitions, flashbacks and premonitions. Premonitions where you see the future, except instead of showing us something that will happen, the flashbacks force us to relive something that has happened. Both feel like moments outside of time. One is pulling us forward, the other pulling us back. As above, so below. What's even stranger, though, is how they physically feel in the mind. When a flashback occurs, there is this distinct physical sensation that I can remember. A presence that basically consumes the mind, almost as if it is demanding entrance, because it basically does. And in reality, our ego fights it at every level, resisting in every category possibly, physically, mentally, emotionally, all sexually, all of those things. Trying to recall what all the visual premonitions felt like in the midst of psychosis requires a little bit more dissection on my part, though. Intuitively, I know that they are eerily similar. The key difference is in their egress. So how they maybe leave us, because the moment they start to enter into our conscious awareness, they're ingressing in. And so in the ingress, they're automatically egressing. So they evoke an emotional and physical response. Their exit, their egress, is vastly different, though. A premonition departs prematurely, leaving us wanting more even, like a film that cuts to black before the climax, like a door that shuts just before you can walk through it. It lingers, leaving behind curiosity, anticipation, or even frustration sometimes. A flashback, on the other hand, does the opposite. It doesn't egress easily. It overtakes every sense, overwhelming us with such force that we wish we could banish it to the ends of the earth. Where a premonition leaves an imprint of the unknown, a flashback replays the inescapable known. A visual premonition often plays out as a first-person movie scene, projected directly into the mind through the lens of the third eye. It's as if you are transported into a future moment, witnessing yourself already there, experiencing it in real time. Not all elements are exactly the same, though, as they are in the premonition to when you actually come to them in your present day. And it's sometimes because they can't be. Your higher self and your subconscious mind can only communicate in the language and symbols and references you currently at that time understand. This is why premonitions will often swap out certain characters or maybe even sometimes familiar places. Not as a deception, it's a translation. So character A is who is in the premonition with you. However, it's really a character B who you haven't met yet. However, they try to correlate it as much as possible. So character A and character B probably have very similar personality types or something that connects them together that is completely similar. A flashback, on the other hand, is the reverse projection. Instead of sending you forward into a potential moment, it transports you backward, taking where you are now and replacing it with where you were. And unlike premonitions, which adapt their imagery for understanding, flashbacks retain their details in immaculate condition. The trauma is preserved in its rawest form, unchanged because that is how the mind initially encoded it, as something too overwhelming to process at the time, frozen in time, until it can be revisited and integrated. There's something profoundly opposite yet parallel in how flashbacks and premonitions ingress into consciousness. A flashback doesn't just enter, it forces itself in, right? Like we said, it's a demanding entrance, pounding on the doors of the mind with a sense of urgency and inevitability. It floods the senses, overtakes awareness, and claims space in the body in a way that cannot be ignored. It feels dense, heavy, and intrusive, as if it is breaking through layers of resistance, which it really is because we technically don't want it there. And it manifests in the body as tightening in the chest, a pressure drop before a storm, the racing of the nervous system, sending signals that something is wrong, even though the event is in the past, and a feeling of being hijacked, like the body is no longer in the present and it's fully back in the past. We even go into tunnel vision, rapid heart rate, adrenaline flooding the limbic system, like being trapped in time. A premonition, however, arrives differently. It still holds presence. It is still demanding. It's not in an invasive way, though. It comes with certainty, not intrusion. It's a whisper that somehow feels louder than a scream. It does not need to break through walls because it was already permitted passage. And in the body, a premonition feels like a knowing before understanding. It's a soft weight resting in the back of the mind, waiting for the conscious mind to notice. It's a vibration through the nervous system without the sense of panic. It's commanding, yet neutral at the same time. A pull in the gut, sometimes a light pressure on the third eye, almost like a slight warmth or presence, and maybe even the hair standing on end. However, it's not normally in terror. Rather, it's in recognition. These parallels are phenomenal. They tell me that they are one and the same. However, flashbacks we don't want, and premonitions we do want. So we're here today to discuss inviting flashbacks in and kind of understanding that they serve a purpose, a higher purpose that will lead us to who we are meant to be on the healing journey. So two of the biggest differences that I just kind of wanted to focus on for a minute are the flashbacks impose. However, premonitions reveal. A flashback, again, very invasionary, right? Like it's like being invaded by the past in the present moment. And it takes with what feels like without permission. A premonition, on the other hand, is a gift of insight from the future. It doesn't necessarily fight its way in. It simply arrives and lingers until it is seen. Now, flashbacks hijack emotions. This is the other big difference, while premonitions tend to guide them. Flashbacks override the nervous system, making you react without control. Premonitions, even though sometimes they may evoke fear, there is no loss of control. There's only awareness. Even when they show us dark possibilities, they carry this underlying current of safety the whole time. Whereas in the flashbacks, we don't feel safe. And it's understandable. But we do need to get to the point where we do feel safe, because that's going to be transformative. And two smaller differences that are subtle yet very profound are flashbacks. They feel like a weight, while premonitions feel like a lift up. A flashback pulls you down into the past, making the body feel heavier, slower, tighter, and more constricted. A premonition, even when warning of danger, often comes with that lightness, as if something beyond you is assisting in showing you the way. So flashbacks, and the second one, flashbacks consume space. Premonitions expand on it. A flashback closes in, it narrows perception and consumes every available thought until there is no room for anything else. A premonition opens perception, stretching into the subconscious in a way that creates more room to see a bigger picture. So we're going to dissect them a little bit on the realm of consciousness. On a conscious level, both flashbacks and premonitions exist outside of linear time. They are realities intersecting through memory or foresight, depending on the direction of their ingress. And we're going to get to a little bit about that later, because I love the fact that it's like memory or foresight, but technically memory and foresight could be considered the same. Now, flashbacks emerge from the subconscious, forcing the past into the present. They are trapped moments in time, unresolved, searching for integration and freedom. Premonitions descend from the higher self, guiding the present toward an awareness of the future. They are whispered messages from the unseen, seeking recognition rather than resolution. Both collide with the now, with the present moment that you are currently in. One comes from below and the other from above. Now, if we truly create our reality, then all of our future experiences are already stored in our subconscious, waiting to be realized. This would mean that both flashbacks and premonitions are not merely mental projections. They are rather releases of information from a reservoir of potential timelines, unfolding through the subconscious in perfect order. This raises a really profound question. If all moments, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously, then are flashbacks and premonitions simply two sides of the same coin, delivered through different channels? I personally, in dissecting this and in my own experience, believe that yes, there are two sides of the same coin, and I don't necessarily think that they're delivered through different channels. I think that we perceive it in that way because of the resistance that we have to one and the openness that we have to another. And again, it's what I'm here to change. Flashbacks are funneled from above and below at the same time. Remember earlier I said our higher self and our soul funnel the flashbacks to us at a specific time for us to experience them because the higher understanding, the healing is there. It's accessible. So from above, higher self, etheric realms, they surface in the order needed for healing. The higher self, in all of its wisdom, coordinates their release into our conscious awareness, making sure we only receive what we are ready to face, like a guardian managing the floodgates of past pain, which is primordial, a godsend. It is really something to be grateful for when you get through it and finally understand. So from below, the subconscious storage, they are trapped experiences, locked in the subconscious until they find an exit route through memory, triggers, or deep introspection. The subconscious releases them when enough awareness has been cultivated to process them. As above, so below. So this means that a flashback is both a divine message from above and a stored imprint from below, converging into the present. Premonitions are funneled from above and below at the same time as well. So from above, again, higher self, etheric realms, they descend as guidance, whispers of what is already known in the nonlinear realm of consciousness. The higher self drops breadcrumbs of awareness, ensuring we are subtly prepared for what is to come. Now from below, our subconscious storage, if we create our reality, then our future already exists as an imprint within our subconscious mind. A premonition is not an external force showing us the future. It is a stored potential being realized through a conscious moment of knowing. This means that a premonition is both an insight from above and an awakening from below, converging in our present. Now, the parallel that both are already inside of us. If every event, past or future, already exists as an imprint, then flashbacks and premonitions are simply opposite processes of retrieval. A flashback is an experience surfacing from past memory storage. It is handed to us in divine order to ensure we can handle it. A premonition is an experience surfacing from future memory storage, and it is handed to us in divine order to ensure we are prepared for it. Both bend time, yet both already exist within us. And pardon my lovely Dallison back there. I think he was dreaming and barking. Now we're going to jump into two different time loops and how they have one function, which of course are flashbacks and premonitions. Flashbacks pull us back to resolve the past before it alters the future. Premonitions pull us forward to prepare for the future before it alters the past. This suggests that healing and destiny are already written within our subconscious. The future isn't coming toward us, it is being called out of us. Just like the past isn't happening to us, it is being released from us. If we are the architects of time within our own consciousness, then every premonition is an echo from what we have already created, and every flashback is a release of what no longer serves what we are creating. If our higher self orchestrates both premonitions and flashbacks in perfect order, What happens when we consciously ask for certain flashbacks to surface? What happens when we intentionally open ourselves to receive premonitions on command? This could mean we are not just receiving, we are directing. It could also mean we are not just navigating time, we are collapsing it to align with our highest timeline. Or what about it meaning healing is not just waiting for memories to emerge, it is choosing the sequence in which they unfold. Which means we are always in control. We just don't know that we are. So where do we go from here? How do we train the mind to shift between premonitions and flashback retrieval intentionally? Can we become aware of what's waiting in our subconscious future memory storage? If we already know everything we will ever experience, then what role does surrender play in the grand orchestration? We are stepping into something far bigger than just memory. This is the engineering of consciousness itself. Here's something to consider. A flashback isn't just a replay. It's a scene on your stage, produced by something deeper. And I want to challenge the way we see them. What if flashbacks aren't just intrusions from the past? They are opportunities in the present, a chance to reclaim your role in your very own story. Trauma may force us to live into or enter into a survival mode. And when that happens, we don't always get to respond in a way that aligns with who we are. We respond in the way that ensures survival. That means fighting wasn't always an option. Running wasn't always an option. Sometimes freezing or going numb was the safest response. And that's something I think we don't talk about enough. While trauma forces us into survival mode, we also choose survival mode because at that time and that moment, it is truly our safest option. There should be no shame in this, only forgiveness for the self and the release of every judgment you hold against yourself for surviving that moment or the multiples of moments. Whatever it was and however you did it. You didn't fail to fight. You didn't fail to run. You didn't fail to speak up. You responded in the way that protected you in that moment with the information that you had at that time to keep you the safest that it could have possibly kept you. And in some cases, fighting back could have done more damage to you than the trauma itself. Our survival responses aren't random. They are calculated by the subconscious to keep us alive, to the point where one day we eventually figure out how to thrive. A flashback, it's a moment resurfacing because it was never completed. Your brain, it's not attacking you. It's giving you a second chance to process what was too overwhelming at the time. And the reality is, trauma changes the way time functions in the mind. So when a flashback happens, it isn't just the past being remembered. It's the past being re-experienced in the present. It fills up the mind. It wraps around your awareness, and it demands to be seen. However, they are here for a reason. What if we didn't resist it? What if we shifted our perspective from this is an attack to this is a message, awaiting release from my body to be transmuted into divine gold? This is where we have the opportunity to take back full control. Because the truth is, healing isn't just about remembering. It's about completing the response you never got to have. Now, let's be very, very clear on this. This does not mean physically reenacting violence or harm against yourself or anyone else. That is not the point of what I'm saying. Now, in a safe and controlled way, the body and mind can be given permission to finally respond. For example, someone who is silenced will most likely need to practice screaming, letting the voice break through where it was once trapped. Someone who is physically overpowered may need to push, punch a bag, take up self-defense, engage the body in the way they never got to. And someone who is paralyzed by fear may need to practice standing their ground, reclaiming their space, even if it's just symbolically. And if you experienced all of these things through complex or compound traumas, then all of these things are going to need to be done at some point in time on your journey. And I can speak from experience on that. The Body Remembers, the wonderful book, The Body Keeps Score. If you have not read it yet, I highly recommend it. Anyways, the body remembers, and it holds on to the response that it never got to complete. That is stored energy that is trapped in the body that needs to be depleted out. No one can do that for us. There is only assistance and intention and the desire to heal. The honesty, the open-mindedness, and the willingness of wanting to heal. That is how trauma and all things dis-ease can find their way to transmutation, and you find your freedom. What most survivors don't know and can be very hard to accept is that a flashback is ultimately occurring to help you heal. It just doesn't feel like it because they are unpredictable, and the fact they really just exist at all, right? Like, now that we've hacked a little bit more of what flashbacks are, we understand their existence a little bit better. But for people that are still going through it and just kind of having the onset of them, it's the reality that they exist at all. Like, we don't want them. They shouldn't be here. A flashback is your brain's way of not just being triggered. It's also feeling like it's now safe to process the original memory. Your brain identifies, at least from all the experience and knowledge that I have gained, that you are no longer in that situation, so the need for suppression is released. Therefore, a flashback is an indicator that you are ready to heal. I mean, this is really a magnificent feat in itself. It means that by some divine source, you have managed to relieve yourself of the traumatizing experience for long enough that your body-mind connection has started to trust and determine that you are safe enough to work through your traumatizing experiences. When viewed through the mystical, psychological lens, this process becomes even more awe-inspiring. Your body-mind connection, what some might call the divine intelligence within you, has determined that you are ready to heal. This isn't just physiological, it's also an energetic shift. For survivors of trauma, the trust between mind and body is often shattered. Flashbacks, uncomfortable as they may be, signify a repair of that trust. This concept aligns beautifully with the idea of alchemy, where something painful or a base is transformed into something powerful or golden. Flashbacks can feel dark and consuming, and they are also evidence of resilience and readiness. Your system is saying you are strong enough now to revisit and release this. When they occur, especially in the beginning, they are completely traumatizing in themselves and very overwhelming. If we can begin to understand them on the deeper level that we have dissected here in this podcast and further, we can then work with them to the best of our capacity at each given moment in time along our healing journey. Basically, we can accept that they are aids to healing our journey, and therefore respond to them in a way that serves us more smooth, more seamless. Those are the types of words I'm looking for right now. So the same flashback will probably show up multiple times. This is because the first time we tend to resist it, the second time maybe we survive it, and that third time though, I'm telling you, if you can understand each one is showing up not to surprise you, even though they absolutely do, especially when it's a new one for the first time, they can totally, just overwhelm and kind of take control of your whole being. They are showing up to say, please heal me. Please heal me so we can heal you. Please release me from this prison that you've held yourself in for far too long. And it is no one's fault. And it is okay that you need healing. And it is okay to heal. It's okay to scream, kick, punch. It's okay to feel like Carrie and want to burn the whole world down. Been there, done that in my mind. Now, feel it out of your body. Cry it out. Punch the pillow or grip that damn steering wheel. It will fade, and one by one, each flashback will disintegrate into non-existence. Survivors often feel betrayed by their own minds when flashbacks occur, especially in the beginning of the early onsets of the PTSDs. reframing them as an indicator of progress and readiness is really transformative. From a scientific standpoint, flashbacks represent the brain transitioning from survival mode to processing mode, which is part of post-traumatic growth. Spiritually, it reflects the innate intelligence of the body-mind connection, suggesting that healing is not just a possibility, it's an inevitability, provided we create the right conditions for it, and ultimately provided that we respond to create the right conditions for it. Our mind has the ability to heal everything within us, all on its own. We have to learn to trust that and allow it to work through its processes, which means face the darkness, walking through the tunnel blind at times. There's always light. I promise your higher self will always hold the light close, and you will see it and have it and hold it just when you need it. Light never leaves you. Now, I'd like to go into a little brief sidetrack story about my own experience and something that just popped into my head whenever I was talking about the intelligence of the body-mind connection. In the psychosis, I was a couple years in, and one of my doctors recommended one of the trials where they use MDMA to process trauma. And it wasn't for me, and I knew that it wasn't for me. However, it intrigued me to go and look up these studies because I wanted to understand what it is they consisted of and the general idea. And when I read it, I realized that my mind in that psychosis was doing everything that those studies were doing, except for my mind was doing it naturally, and it was doing it at a slower pace for me to be able to handle, because I can promise you this, if I had joined one of those studies and I had tried to process, but I cannot, my words are hard for me to find today. I don't know what it is. My anxiety feels a little high. I was very, very excited for this podcast this morning, and then I shifted somewhere, and it's okay. Maybe I'm just not feeling that great. Anyway, so just bear with me on this one, okay? This is just a raw podcast with minor edits. So anyways, and yeah, I found out that everything that my mind was doing, everything that my higher self was teaching me, all of the lessons I was learning spiritually, everything that I was doing to process the trauma and re-experiencing it, not just through flashbacks, but in the ways that this MDMA study was proclaiming was being done. And I was just fascinated by it. And it just reiterated what they were already showing me, what they were already proving to me, and what they were already teaching me, that my mind can do anything, that my mind can heal itself if I allow it to show me that it knows how to. And that is exactly what I did. And that is exactly why I am where I am today. And that is exactly what gives me the blessing to speak these words on this podcast and be this vessel of hopefully hope. I mean, I feel like I'm a vessel of hope at this point for myself and for others, because this struggle was not easy. Having any of the PTSDs and emotional difficulties, it's disparaging. It's hard. And I understand it. And I have been there. And, you know, when we're in that, sometimes we don't even realize how much of the suffering we're holding on to. And believing in the ability to heal allows us to start releasing our grasp on the suffering that the paradigms around us have taught us that we're supposed to live in. So, back to the regularly scheduled podcast. Flashbacks, they are not a one-size-fits-all. They can be made somewhat simple and understandable. So I'm going to kind of summarize that here and give you just a little bit of dissectable introspect that maybe, you know, one day we'll take the time to break down further, like in a microscopic way. However, today we're just going to skim these basics. So some of the most common types of flashbacks, I've listed 5. Emotional flashbacks. These ones are the kind you experience on anniversaries of stressful or traumatic experiences. You'll hear many people make comments about how a certain day, month, or season even causes them to behave differently or feel differently. Many people don't even know that they experience these until they start digging into it and being, the awareness kind of comes to light, which I guess is kind of redundant to say. Anyways, higher self will always assist, and higher self will raise your consciousness and allow that awareness to come in. It is one that I have found, though, that for me, I just didn't even know that this existed in me for a long time until this journey. So I'm just speaking from my own experience. The second are visual flashbacks. You might see these as the mental replay of the event, which is what we talked very fluidly about in this episode. Again, these feel like watching a movie in first person, and you are the main character. We, again, just discussed this. And I was able to compare and contrast them to Premonitions, which was a completely wild ride. Much gratitude to my higher self and any and all assistance in that being funneled down into this vessel that I am. Number 3 is somatic flashbacks. These are physical. Your body remembers the trauma, and you might feel sensations like tension, pain, or even numbness. For me, the one that sticks out the most from my own experience is every so often I get what feels like a literal knife going into my back on the right side of my spine along my right shoulder blade. The first time it happened, I was crippled for like 2 days. I just couldn't even use my back or my muscles or anything like that. It was awful. The time since, it has softened with each year or cycle that it comes around. I'm actually still dissecting this one. It's so painful and so prominent that it's, I could not help but mention it. 4 is an internal dialogue flashback. This one is subtle, however, it is extremely powerful. Hearing the critical or harmful words of a past abuser in your own thoughts. For me, one of the ones that stands out most prominent is every time I got dressed and looked in the mirror, I would hear the words that were repeatedly disparaged at me through pain and hate. Therefore, every time I looked in the mirror after that experience, I ended up having this pre-written transcript that I basically read to myself on repeat, being those same things that were said to me. And reprogramming from that was and has been just an absolute bitch. There's no doubt about it. Now, I can definitely tell you that nothing was worse than the years of what they call like gender dysphoria, what they call gender dysphoria. I always want to call it body dysmorphia for some reason. Maybe I'll like look into that later. So anyways, what they call gender dysphoria. And I went through that for 3 years. And that was hell. And eventually I'll get to the point where I feel comfortable enough recording an episode on the holistic and spiritual healing of it. It's just a really sensitive subject, and it's full of hate and rage right now, like in our society. Currently, therefore, I'm just not ready to venture there due to my own feelings of insafety about it. Okay, so moving on to the 5th and currently final flashback. This does not mean that this is all of the flashbacks in existence, because there are definitely different types, we'll keep unpacking the PTSDs. So these are just, like I said, 5 pronounced categories that I am currently highlighting. And the number 5 is an olfactory flashback. These are incredibly powerful as well. All of them are, unfortunately, but again, I shouldn't even say unfortunately. Like, this is where like my negative, all of this didn't serve a purpose. It was awful. It was traumatizing to go through, but guess what? Served a purpose. And I would like to start integrating that in. Please hire yourself. Thank you very much. Okay. So incredibly powerful and based off of scents, aromas, smells, directly linked to the brain's limbic system, which governs memory and emotion. There are not just flashbacks that are triggered by smells. There are also flashbacks that recreate scents from the trauma stored in your amygdala that are triggered by other things. Or just the higher self's decision that time is the right time to funnel that down. I've had some very, very interesting sense. But that's also been in spiritual awakening. So some of it, and that's, again, this is where it comes to like premonitions and flashbacks being the same. Same with this olfactory and, one of the clairs. it's the same to me, because there were scents that I had to re-smell from the traumas, but then there were scents that were never part of the traumas, and they're just my higher self just pulling some bullshit, because it literally smelled like shit. Like, literally shit. And I have no idea, like, were they calling me out on my bullshit? That's what it feels like. Thanks, higher self. You were calling me out on my bullshit at the time. I appreciate that. All right. Okay. Well, anyways, moving on. So, each type of flashback is unique, and they all have one thing in common. Okay, well, a lot of things. So, one thing I want to focus on right now: they're a sign that your mind and body are working through what is unhealed. So again, it brings us right back full circle into everything is here for our healing. We have very little understanding of what our mind is truly capable of. And if you want an example of that, it's look at our DNA. Like, literally, scientists, and I say this over and over again, they call portions of our DNA junk DNA because they don't know what it does. Like, why not just admit, like, hey, this is not necessarily junk DNA. This is just something that we have no clue what it is, instead of labeling it something that is in my terms, kind of negative, but whatever. Well, non-duality. Nothing's bad, nothing's good. So how do you know if you're experiencing a flashback? Well, normally you know. But if you're not sure, start by paying attention to patterns. Do you notice sudden emotional shifts that don't match the present moment? Do certain smells, sounds, or even seasons trigger specific feelings? Are there smells that only you can smell and don't fit the scene that you are currently physically experiencing? Understanding these cues helps you separate the past from the present. So, for example, if you find yourself suddenly overwhelmed by fear while doing something ordinary, pause and ask, is this fear about now, or is it about then? This small moment of awareness is powerful. It's the beginning of regaining control. Dang it! And in the midst of recording this podcast, I, of course, speak to myself through myself and realize, like, my anxiety, it's not about this podcast, but it is showing up. So that means that there is something with these emotions that I'm feeling in this podcast script and putting this stuff out here that is attaching to an old memory of something. And that is why my anxiety is stirring, because yes, it is a emotional flashback. So, well, that's a fun ride. Gonna have to journal about that after this. Anyways, one tip that I can offer you, and sometimes I'm literally in the midst of something that I just cannot take the time to step away from. So this is talking about every now and then a memory or some form of a flashback will come back up, and I can't, like, I'm in the middle of work or doing something that is very important, or I'm on overload that day, or I'm just like super, super tuned in. And my higher self is trying to funnel this memory through. I have created a trusting and reliable dialogue with my higher self. And I've done this work for long enough that my higher self knows that I'm not just saying it. So whenever I tell my higher self, I can't right now. I can't tend to this memory right now. However, then I tell my higher self, however, if you can bring it back at a time that I'm feeling less overwhelmed, I would be happy to work through this. And then it is magically lifted and brought back around at a more convenient time. So you can literally learn to work with the masters of alchemy that are your healing journey, which is ultimately you. So, understanding this dual nature of flashbacks, their discomfort and their purpose, can help survivors move from resistance to curiosity. And in curiosity, we open our minds and begin to open ourselves up to the willingness we need to do this hard work. When you're in a flashback, grounding is key. So here are just a few simple techniques that should help you hopefully be able to stand in your power more. So one of the recommended things are you can name 5 things you see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Another is deep breathing. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and then exhale for 6. The out breath being longer tends to calm your nervous system. Or you can use an anchor phrase, something like, I am safe, this is so-and-so date, so-and-so location, and the memory, you can acknowledging the memory and saying, I am not there anymore. This is not this. This is actually the one that I use the most. So when, like, I will touch the wall beside me and I will say, you know, I am my name. This is my home. I am safe here. This is the wall in my hallway. That is my boyfriend. Joe is his name. That is not, and then I would say my abuser's name. That is not him. I am not there anymore. I am safe. And I will repeat that to myself and hold on to the wall until it passes. So then there's physical grounding, which placing your feet firmly on the floor and reach out to the closest wall or item nearby and recite what it is. This is a wall located in this location at this time. This is not where my mind or the memory thinks that I am. So I do the blend of the anchor and the physical grounding are the biggest for me. However, everyone finds what works for them, and that's what you're here to do. These tools won't necessarily erase the flashback. However, they will help you maintain processing it as well as stabilize yourself throughout it until you or it relieves itself of each other. And there's many of times that, I was standing in a walk-in cooler, screaming or bawling my eyes out, hiding from the rest of the world in the middle of a shift. So trust me when I say, again, repeatedly, I understand how truly hard all of this can be. However, flashbacks are not our enemies. They are messengers. And when we learn to listen, they can guide us to profound healing and spiritual awakening. Understanding flashbacks is like turning on a light in a dark room. Once you can see what's happening, you can start to navigate it. You can begin to separate the past from the present, and that's where healing starts. It's not about erasing the trauma. It's about learning to live with it in a way that empowers you rather than controls you. Not all flashbacks are manageable in the moment. Some hit like a tidal wave, leaving you feeling like you're drowning in the pain and chaos of the past. And in these moments, all you can do is hold on for dear life. Whether it's gripping the sheets, the steering wheel, a pillow, anything solid and grounding, the act of enduring can feel insurmountable. And yet, that is progress. For many survivors, flashbacks can push them to the brink. In moments of unbearable intensity, things like self-harm, cutting, burning, or other forms of self-mutilation become a coping mechanism. While these acts might seem like control or relief in the moment, they only deepen the wound, both physically and emotionally. Learning to replace self-harming behaviors with something non-self-harming, like gripping a solid object, screaming into a pillow, picking up the phone and making a call. These are powerful steps toward reclaiming your safety. Self-harm actually keeps us stuck in the perpetual cycle of pain, never truly processing it out of our body and only creating more traumatizing events in our minds. And I know this because I have been there. Self-harm can become a pattern of addiction just like anything else, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, sexual, whatever it may be. The list is long. This is why I am speaking out on this vulnerable topic. This is why I am here putting my voice out here to the public so you know that you have to stop, that you can stop, and that you need to stop if this is part of your journey. The brief relief or the chaos you're seeking is only harming you and the world more. So if you can't do it for yourself, do it for the rest of us until you can do it for yourself. Get help and understand that this journey is meant to eliminate all forms of self-harm. We will get there, I promise you. However, physical self-harm is the first thing that we need to eradicate. The path has already been laid and walked by others. Now we just need to follow in our own unique pathways, which are literally side by side, arm in arm. That is what we are. And I'll tell you, I'll tell you that I remember one of my own walk through the threshold moments so vividly. So vividly that every time I drive past that Wendy's restaurant, that memory pops out at me like it was yesterday. I had a new visual flashback that had started to surface that horrified me on every level of my being, quite honestly. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to ever see it. So I grabbed the sharpest thing near me and I just ran it down my arm until the visual went away. Then a later day, and the time it surfaced again, the same visual. However, somehow, some way, enlightening happened in between those two series of flashbacks. Maybe 3, might have taken 3. I can't remember exactly. However, I can tell you that when that flashback hit again and that visual came to my mind, I was able to instead, I wanted to reach for something again. But instead, I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that I thought my hands would bruise and I thought I would actually break my steering wheel. My entire body was trembling and all I could do was scream and cry and shake until the visualization passed. It wasn't pretty and it certainly didn't feel like healing at the time. Looking back, I know that it was. That moment was me choosing to ride the wave instead of allowing that visual to weigh me down and sink me beneath it. It was progress. After that visual showed up again, and that next time, I already knew I could survive it on healthier terms. One where I believed it would no longer kill me, and it could no longer harm me. It disgusted me at the time. However, it no longer held the power it had once held. And now to this day, that visual holds no power over me. And reading all of these words, I can see maybe why my anxiety is a little bit high, because all of this stuff is, it's hard. It's hard to talk about. It's hard, to be this vulnerable. And my cat is laying on my lap and, kind of messing with the wire. So if you hear a little weird noises in the background, that's what it is. I am not a professional editor. I apologize. Kind of, Anyways, the moment I gripped that steering wheel wasn't just about survival. It was an absolute breakthrough. It was a signal, an energetic and psychological download that my healing was entering a new stage. What I didn't realize at the time was that this single act of holding on, of not resorting to self-harm, wasn't just progress. It was the opening of a doorway. One that could only be unlocked by choosing a different response to the pain. I had to stop fighting pain with more pain. Instead, I had to fight it with peace and some form of acceptance. When someone self-harms during flashbacks, they are not weak. They are trying to manage an overwhelming storm of emotions and sensations. They are also trying to chase it away. However, I want to tell you something pretty profound. Your mind does not have the ability to harm you. And it senses that you are harming yourself and therefore stops with the memory after so many attempts. For myself, it was normally 3 attempts that my mind would bring up the memory. Self-harm creates a new loop, a cycle where the pain of the past triggers the need for immediate relief. And the act of harming reinforces the same trauma response. The body doesn't get the chance to process, and the mind doesn't learn trust. Instead, the flashbacks return again and again because the loop has not been broken. Your mind cannot move on from that layer or set or record of flashbacks. It is currently playing in your prefrontal cortex. This is why gripping the steering wheel or any other non-harming action is so monumental. It finally disrupts the loop. It says to the body and mind, we're not doing this the old way anymore. We are going to fight you a little less and reduce our self-destructive tendencies. It's the beginning of a new dialogue between your mind, body, and soul. It's another first step toward rebuilding the trust and self-destruct that trauma shattered and created. From an energetic perspective, self-harm keeps the body and mind trapped in stagnation. It creates a block, preventing the flow of healing energy from moving through you. When you choose not to self-harm, even if all you can do is grip a solid object and cry, you're allowing that energy to move for the first time. You're creating space for your body to release what it's been holding on to, and for your mind to process what it once couldn't face. Psychologically, this shift is profound. Flashbacks are your brain's way of saying, it's time to process this shit. When you respond with self-harm, the brain perceives that as evidence that the body is still unsafe, and the trauma remains unprocessed. When you choose something non-harming, you send a new signal. We are safe now. We can handle this. Over time, this begins to unravel the grip that trauma has on your nervous system. Choosing a different response, like holding on to that steering wheel, is more than just survival. It's the entry point to the next layer of healing. That next layer is where the mind and body begin to rebuild another layer of trust. It's where the flashbacks may still come, and they are no longer met with the same reactive behaviors. It's where you begin to develop resilience instead of reliving the same loop. Breaking the loop also opens the door to deeper emotional and spiritual healing. Trauma often disconnects us from ourselves, fragmenting our sense of identity and our worth. When you stop responding to flashbacks with self-harm, you are essentially telling yourself, I am worth protecting. I am worth saving. That's not just progress. It's reclamation. It's a return to your wholeness. I won't pretend that breaking the loop is easy. It's messy, painful, and exhausting. Every time you grip the sheets, the wheel, or even your own hands instead of turning to self-harm, you're teaching your body and mind that it is safe to move forward. You are showing yourself that you can trust again. Trust your feelings, trust your body, your instincts, and ultimately, your capacity to heal. Because that's, maybe part of what it is, right? We don't trust in our capacity to heal. So we resist it and we fear it because we don't know what we are truly capable of. You are capable. You are more than capable. And you need to prove it to yourself to find out, because you can't just go off my words, because my experience is my experience and I can say it until I'm blue in the face, but until you do it, you're not going to connect fluidly with it. And that's what you need to know what you are capable of. Healing is not linear, and it's not always graceful. Every time you choose something non-harming, no matter how small it feels, you're moving to the next layer. You're breaking the cycle of pain and creating a new cycle, one of trust, growth, and freedom. If you're stuck in the loop right now, know that it's not your fault. Also know this: you have the power to break free, even if it's one moment, one choice, one grip at a time. Healing isn't about doing it perfectly. There is no perfect when it comes to healing. You are already perfect, how you are in every moment. That's where the paradox and the misperception come in. So healing, again, not about doing it perfectly. It's about continuing to choose yourself over and over, continuing to choose healing over and over, until that loop and all the other loops become a distant memory that have no control over you, and your life becomes your own. If you struggle with self-harm or suicidality, please contact a professional immediately. Your higher self will lead you to the right ones at the right time. Don't be afraid to reach out. Open your heart to yourself and pick up the phone and call a hotline or step into that residential treatment center. There is no shame in it. You can find your way out of this darkness, and there's no shame in needing or asking for help. I promise I had plenty, and I'll be happy to share it all in future episodes. If no one told you yet today, I love you. I love you. And you are loved so immensely. You just maybe forgot what it feels like, so you don't have any idea. We're here to start remembering together. When we talk about healing, we often imagine calm meditations or moments of clarity. The truth is, healing is messy. It's raw. It's honestly, oh my gosh, there's an old colleague of mine used to use the reference of no lube and sandpaper is, gonna kind of keep it PG. And that's what it's like, sometimes. The truth is, healing is extremely messy. It's gripping the sheets and sobbing your heart out because you didn't know you could survive that much emotion. Every time you survive a flashback without harming yourself or even someone else, you're proving to your mind and body that safety is possible. You're teaching yourself a new narrative. You're showing yourself, I can feel this, and I will be okay. If you find yourself in these moments, I've got a few steps that you can consider doing. Find something to hold on to. Sheets, steering wheel, anything close to you. Yourself even. The act of gripping creates a physical anchor to the present moment. And it also kind of puts you in a freeze frame where you immobile yourself. So then that way you don't react and lose control. And then when you're doing that, let it out. Scream, cry, shake. Your body is releasing stored energy. And it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And remind yourself of safety. I know that I would rock back and forth and just hold myself. And that would just bring me comfort and feelings of safety. And if you can repeat a grounding phrase, like this is not then, I am safe now, that will also help. And then reach out afterwards. When the storm is past, connect with someone that you trust, a friend, a therapist, or a support group. Let them know what you just survived. And let them know. We hold all this stuff inside of us for far too long, and we think we have to do it all by ourselves, and we're so ashamed. Let them know. Don't trauma dump. Make sure it's someone that is equipped to handle it. We all learned that lesson, promise. And what really did it for me was I was blessed to have a sponsor who I confided in, and that sponsor told me to treat it like as if I wanted to use drugs or alcohol. And if I had an urge to harm myself, to call her immediately. Now, I didn't the first few times because my mind had to acclimate to the concept, because I had never felt safe in that regard to call somebody, to trust somebody. And so at first, when I did start to pick up the phone to call her, it was right after I had harmed myself, or even a day or two. I might have waited, it all went, like a process. But then there was the day, and I can remember it very well, exactly where I was and what it was over. The day that I picked up the phone before I hurt myself. And that was the last day that I physically self-harmed. It's important to honor the strength it takes to endure severe flashbacks. Many don't understand that simply holding on, literally and figuratively, is a monumental act of resilience. For those who have turned to self-harm, know this. You are not weak or broken. You're trying to survive, and there is a path to learning safer ways to release your pain. Call a 1-800 number. Go into a residential treatment facility. Get therapists. Get multiples. Get one for cognitive behavioral. Get one for prolonged exposure. Get one for EMDR. Attack all the levels of trauma at once. Get help. Healing isn't about perfection. It's about progress. Gripping those sheets instead of hurting yourself. Screaming into the void instead of suppressing it. That's progress. And with every wave you survive, you're not just healing, you are reclaiming your life. So I'm going to bring this full circle and not have what feels like a sad and morbid ending to this episode, because writing it, rereading it, and then now going through it definitely had the waves of emotions. Maybe I could even feel myself kind of riding them, and I just got to go with the flow. The reality is we addressed some very serious symptoms and side effects of trauma, and bringing awareness to them, and maybe even some desensitization to the topics will help open the pathways of communication more to where others will begin to trust they can discuss such severities with the right people. Your mental health deserves help no matter what phase of the journey or healing that you are in. We could all use assistance and feedback and helpful ideas to move us along our paths. Treatment centers, hotlines, groups, one-on-one. Take advantage of all of it. Utilize all of it. Flashbacks aren't here to haunt us. They are unfinished messages seeking resolution. They are the mind's way of saying, this is something we still need to integrate. And the most powerful thing that we can do is listen. Not resist, not drown it out. Listen, observe, and when we are ready, respond. Take out the reaction and respond. Because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about reclaiming your place in the present. And that starts with recognizing your role in your own story. This is Toria of Hermetically Speaking, closing out this lovely yet stuttering episode of truth, awareness, prosperity, and alchemy. Until the next one, next week, remember to find support groups, call the therapists, keep the appointments, revolutionize the healing industry, because you are light and you are doing it just being here today. And I will do a shameless plug because, I'm a transformational mindset reprogramming coach when it comes to healing from trauma and emotional difficulties and discomforts and distress. And so I have hermeticallyspeaking.com where you can book intuitive and energetic sessions. And then I have a signature course that's getting ready to come out as well. And I'll be launching the freebie to that. I have a couple different websites for different purposes depending on where you are in your journey. And those are all in the info on the podcast description below. So much love, many blessings, and namaste. You are amazing. Remember that always.